I'd like to talk a little bit about a support method that is fairly common among male singers in particular. And I've asked a couple of singers, I said, how do you support your voice? And they say, well, like when you go to the bathroom. And I said, what do you mean like when you go to the bathroom? Well, like you're constipated and you push down like that. And I said, yeah, but when you push down, then your voice gets all tight. Because remember, the third law of motion says for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if I press down, somebody's going to press up. And they said, oh, yeah, that's why you have to open your throat. So you press down, and then you open your throat, and you sing like that. Ah, right? Well, it might make the voice darker and maybe even a little mellower, but it takes the clearness, the brightness, the metallic quality off the voice pretty much completely and makes high notes just adventures because you're simply taking up too much weight and there's too much interference in the throat as a reaction to pressing down that has to be compensated for somehow. So I'm pressing down and then I have to open my throat and they go, ah, and I get in this great big sort of hollow type sound. And you do hear it among lower voices. Some of them have more success than others. Only knew one tenor that you could say had success with it. And that was John Vickers, who had one of the truly fabulous voices I ever heard, but he always struggled for high notes, and his high notes did not carry over the full orchestra well. And I asked him, how do you sing? He said, I press down. I said, just like I'm constipated, I push down. And I said, well, when I do that, I always feel like I'm choking. He said, that's because you don't open your throat enough. You have to open your throat wider. You have to yawn more. So I go, push, and then I do this. And I ended up with sort of a quasi-baritonal sound that required all sorts of activity in my throat to compensate for this tremendous pressure, right? So in general, vertical pressures, up or down. If I press straight down, I get a reaction in my throat. If I push straight up, I get a reaction in my throat. So the idea is to avoid vertical leans. Let's call them leans. The activity of the breath, having pressure at one end and a reaction at the other. In Italian, it's called a lean, right? They call it appoggiare, which means to lean. So if I lean the breath and I let gravity lean it straight down, I can go, ah. Okay, so if I let gravity take it and there's no pressing and no pushing, I can drop my voice down into my pelvic floor, my breath, and my breath will stay there, and I go, ah, and the throat is free. I'm not having to compensate and create either new tensions, new muscles, or neutralizations of muscles that are getting very active. So if you use a vertical lean or any kind of straight down breath support concept, be sure you don't press down, because if you do, you'll get an action in your throat, a reaction in your throat, and you'll have to make an action in your throat of some kind to be able to sing with it. So remember, any kind of dead drop vertical lean, you want to sing like the huge obese singers do, who have all that weight, who have huge legs and huge bottoms and huge hips and huge abdomens, and everything is pulling everything straight down, and gravity, I mean, let's face it, gravity can be a good technique if you know how to use it, because we're not floating off into space, are we? So gravity will hold the breath down. And every square inch of breath, of air in the atmosphere has a certain weight to it. That's what barometric pressure is. So you figure 21 pounds per square inch or 19 pounds per square inch, depending on whether it's a high or a low. But that breath is sitting, if you relax everything, the breath will sit right in the middle of your pelvic floor. And there are two chakras down there. For those of you who do yoga, you know what I'm talking about. And there's two base chakras down there, and you can just rest the breath. Take a deep breath, and then just drop the breath like that, and let it go down. You go, ah, right? But a better way was discovered somewhere along the line, back in Italy, a long, long time ago. And that was to use diagonal leans, which means you breathe in your lower back, right? And you're at a diagonal like this. The breath is going into your lower back. And then the breath goes and leans up against the front of the diaphragm. You go, ah. It gives you a kind of a breath control, because you are doing something by leaning your breath. there are active techniques and passive techniques in martial arts. In karate, they call it soft styling or hard styling. Hard styling is any time you use muscle to control something, and soft styling is when you use gravity to control something. So both methods work. Some are better for other kinds of music. For instance, you take an incredible historical, maybe the greatest big Wagnerian soprano of all time was Kirsten Flagstad, but she didn't sing much Verdi. Verdi requires staccatos and trills and coloratura and all kinds of things. And according to Laurence Melchior and George London, both of whom knew Flagstad very well and discussed singing with her a lot, she was a dead dropper. And she apparently sang as a soubrette, light lyric soprano until she had a baby. And after the baby, she waited a few months to sing, and then she opened her mouth and she was a dramatic soprano. And she always said that carrying the baby around moved her mind in a way that made her everything sit down in the pelvic floor. So there's a lot of talk in Europe about sing like you're pregnant. They have sayings like 9 months pregnant with triplets, or 14 months pregnant with quintuplets. You walk around like everything is hanging down, like gravity has it, and everything has weight. It's like, I think it was Tetrasini who said, you want to breathe like your air, like your breath has weight, and it drops down. One of the great meditation techniques is to imagine that air is like mercury. When you breathe in, it has weight. It's liquid, like mercury is liquid, but it's heavy, like mercury, and it will settle right into the bottom. Diagonal leans are much more traditional in the Italian school, and the ones that were taught really by Lamperti, the Lamperti father and son, and by Manuel Garcia, and by Matilda Marchesi, and those people of the bel canto era. The way they discuss it, everything used a lean on the lower chest, and they would do a lot of staccatos. If you can't find a point of leaning, then you do staccatos. So I take a breath behind me, I lean the breath in the front, and I go, ah, 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 and that's the voice. That's the voice. So you don't need more voice than that. Not if it's sitting here. But you can do a dead drop method and take a deep breath in, let everything go, and go, immediately your dynamic control gets interfered with. It's harder for you to control your dynamics and sing softer and sing cuter and sing livelier and sing happier and sing sadder. It's fantastic. And all you have to do is stand on the stage and honk huge tones for 4 or 5 hours over a Wagnerian orchestra. Constipation, that method of pressing down, has a tremendous effect on the throat. And you must do something in your throat to compensate for that. So we would like to just not use those hard style, muscular, pressing down methods. We'd rather just breathe deeply into the lower back and lean the breath on the diaphragm in the front. As Richard Tucker said to me, breathe behind you and sing in front of you. Well, it took a while to figure out what he was talking about, but he knew how to do it probably as well, if not better, than anyone I ever knew. So I hope this will help you find your breathing method that is suitable for your voice type also. If I'm a basso profondo and have a tremendous, huge bass voice, I might get away with using a vertical lean, because I don't have to do a lot of coloratura, a lot of staccatis, and a lot of trills. I don't have to do a lot of extreme high notes. Those great basses that I knew personally, like Jerome Hines and Gyaroff and Siepi, they all used the diagonal lean. And that permitted them to sing high notes. George London was another one who could sing bass rolls, sang bass rolls beautifully. And they would sing that string of high Gs that Mephistopheles sings in Gounod's Faust, in the Serenade. And they'd do them without any problem at all, those huge voices they had. So I would recommend that if you use a vertical lean, be sure you use a dead gravity drop and don't press down with muscles at all, because it will react in your throat. Thanks.